Mama and Maggie's Boys, Part 2, In the Blink of an Eye. In the 4 months she'd lived there, my mama did what she could to comfort this sad little boy, but Leland never let her get too close. She'd never been around a 5-year-old like him. Always so quiet, he was the one she had to go looking for. All she had to do with the others was listen and follow the noise. At breakfast that morning, he'd been even quieter than usual. When everybody else had gone to start their day, he just sat there, alone. Mama was pouring hot water from the stove into a dishpan at the bottom of the deep kitchen sink when Leland snuck up behind her and tugged on her skirt. "Darline, what happened to my mama?" Putting the pan back on the stove, Mama took a breath, preparing herself. She knew this was her one chance to tell this child his mama's story. She wanted to get it right. Turning around, she sat down at the table where she had watched him push oatmeal around his bowl a little earlier. He stood in front of her and didn't turn away when she looked him in the eye and explained, "Your mama got real sick, Leland, and it made her forget everything. All the happy times she had and the people she loved, like you, she lost 'em all. They all disappeared. They're all gone and she can't find 'em anymore." Leland's big blue eyes, so much like his mama's, widened as his little face scrunched up trying to understand something too big for a boy his size to carry. Darline felt the weight of his gaze as he searched her face for an explanation, a way to clear the fog in his little boy head. Ignoring the lump rising in her throat, she wouldn't look away. In that quiet moment, the ache in her heart matched the worst that life had ever brought her way as she watched Leland search for his mama, even if he didn't know where to look for her anymore. The silence between them stretched wide, filling the room, until Leland finally dropped his eyes. Staring at his hands, twisting my mama's apron, longing to find his own mama there instead, he knew something important had gone missing. It left a hole in his chest, like the post holes Daddy dug around the farm, only this little boy didn't know what to put in there. That's when Leland remembered his mama saying a prayer when things disappeared. She made it a game they'd play together till whatever was lost was found again. "Tony, Tony, look around. Something's lost and must be found. Looking high, looking low. Tony, show me where to go." One time they looked all day for a ring. It belonged to his mama's mama, his Mormor, who was born in Denmark and brought it with her when she came to America. A plain gold band nearly lost forever until his mama started praying. She told him the ring had come from the old country, a place called Det Gameland, only he heard the Camel Lands. Searching through every drawer and pocket, every bag, and under every cushion, his mama just kept looking. When there was no place left to look inside the house, they went outside. Nothing was off limits, and Mama just kept praying. When he went to bed that night, the ring was still lost, but by morning, as if by magic, it had been found. Maybe the Tony prayer would work for him too. Help him find his mama, bring her back where she belonged. My mama could see the wheels turning behind Leland's eyes. He was thinking about what she was saying, taking it all in. But she'd never heard of the Tony prayer or Camel Lands, and Leland didn't tell her. He just prayed. Darline tried to fill the cavern his mama's absence had left, but she didn't fool herself into thinking it could be done. She watched him month after month, her heart breaking a little more each day. Once Walt's visits to his wife ended and Mama's care brought stability to Leland's life, Maggie got better. She found a measure of peace. Leland still spent time with her, but he stopped looking for his mama. The prayer didn't work. Mama was gone, lost, just like the ring, but there'd be no finding her. The Camel Lands were just too dark for him to see. Leland gave up, but he didn't let go. He had to learn to live with all the empty post holes in his heart and tread carefully around the woman who looked like Mama, but wasn't. Darlene tried to shield him from the hurt that lingered. She could see it in the way he watched Maggie from the door of her room, his little fists clenched around something too sharp to let go. Maggie would glance at him sometimes with the faintest flicker of recognition, but most days her gaze drifted past him like he wasn't even there. Each time Leland turned a little quieter, a little smaller, as if he was folding himself away. Mama saw what it was doing to him. She saw it in Walter, too, the way the strain of holding the family together bent him lower every day. Maggie wasn't just lost to herself. She was pulling them all into a world where nothing made sense. Something had to change. Leland needed to find his way in life without the mother he'd lost. Besides, Maggie needed the kind of care Mama and Walter just couldn't give her anymore. But it would take another year for him to finally make the decision to admit Maggie to the Clarinda State Hospital. Mama stayed on through it all, and it wasn't long before she and Walter were falling in love. Maggie's story came to a tragic end, but it wasn't the end of the burden we carried. No, ma'am. It's just the beginning. The mess we were left with after the real Maggie disappeared was more'n just the farm chores or raising her boys. This mess settled in your bones. It was the kind you couldn't clean up and scrub away, no matter how hard you tried. And then there was Evelyn Lee. That poor child carried more than his fair share of the family troubles. He hadn't asked for it, didn't deserve it, but life don't care about fairness. Years later, when Evelyn was dying in a cancer hospital in Buffalo, New York, he wondered if his Iowa family would come see him. He loved the mama who raised him and cared for him now, but he wanted to know the mama who'd lost him. Later, his question, "Will they come to see me?" sharpened like a butcher's knife into, "Why don't they come to see me?" My mama had no answer, at least not an answer that would make it any better. Mama held her tongue when she needed to, but not when it came to how life had hurt this child who wasn't her son but might as well have been. She let Walter have it more'n once over how Evelyn got treated, calling him boy instead of son, treating him like the poor child was cursed. Walter had his reasons, but they don't sit right with me even now. I've lived enough life and learned enough along the way to see how his heart got so beat up he locked it away and forgot where he put the key. Then he went on pretending everything was fine while the rest of us were drowning. Of course, Daddy never liked questions he didn't want to answer, and Evelyn's weren't the kind you could sidestep with any real success. Those questions landed hard and heavy, stirring up everything folks didn't want to talk about. Maybe that's why his Iowa family ignored him while he was alive. He died on March 25th, 1977. When Evelyn's Iowa family finally showed up that summer to visit his grave, it was too little too late. I was there at Leland's house when Maggie started reciting pieces of her life like a child repeating her ABCs, but the sadness in her voice told me she knew something about how she got here and why. I have 2 boys. One of my boys is dead. It was all so matter of fact, spoken by a woman child who couldn't comprehend the gravity of the situation, telling you that someone is dead. The air tasted bittersweet. She was happy to be with Leland. She knew he was her son, but there were tears in her eyes when she talked about the one who died. She never said his name, though. She just called him her boy. But when she said it, it was full of love. Leland introduced her, saying, "Wally Faye, this is my mama, Maggie Phillips." Leland called my mama by her first name, Darline. Maggie would always be his mama, the one and only. Then looking at Maggie, Leland said, "Mama, this is Wally Faye, Darline and Daddy's daughter." Funny as I think about it now, he didn't call me his sister. Memories rushed through the room, wrapping around us like a wave in the ocean. The force behind it was a mystery to me, something I wouldn't learn about till many years later. No matter, though, the impact still nearly knocked us all off our feet. But we stood there, pretending everything was as it should be. This is normal, whatever the hell that is. No questions, please. As I stretched out my hand to shake hers, our eyes locked, and the once whole and complete Maggie entered the room. "It's nice to meet you, Maggie." I could feel every eye in the room on us as vibrations of a shared thread stretched across time. Separate lives spun from different looms, knots and patterns matched in ways we couldn't explain, blurring the world around us. We waded in and crossed into something strangely familiar as I found a piece of myself in this woman's story. She answered with, "My boy is dead." In a twinkling, we stepped out of time and space, and our hearts connected in that tender place where we had both loved her boy. The fog of failed surgery lifted for a brief moment. Years of confusion ran to hide in a corner, making room for everything to come clear. Her boy had played the role of my brother, and I had cared for him as much as a scared out of my wits 18-year-old girl alone in Buffalo, New York could. At that introduction, I saw the Maggie that Daddy had loved and Leland called Mama. I saw the Maggie who held Evelyn Lee to her breast in a way too brief 8-week introduction before being whisked away to surgery where a doctor would erase her future. They barely had time to bond, but she had loved Evelyn well, even before his birth. His father was the love of her life, and every time she looked at that baby's clear blue eyes, she saw his face. "Did you know my boy?" Maggie asked me. Looking in the same bright blue eyes I'd seen in her boy's face, eyes flooded with everything I knew of him. A smile as big as the moon, an easy target for my teasing. A boy who would learn to preach and love to sing. One in a long line of sin eaters. "Yes, Maggie, I knew your boy." There was so much I couldn't say, and her sister Verna, who had made this visit possible, seemed to know it. She watched me as I held Maggie's hand in mine, wishing I could tell her more. Maggie's smile made everything better in that moment, even as it nearly wrecked us all. I wasn't Evelyn's sister like Maggie had been told. I was his cousin. My Uncle Gene was his father. 30 years ago, she knew all the secrets that were dancing around us now. When I look back at that visit, the tension in the room makes a lot of sense. Like everyone knew something they weren't saying, and it hung in the air like smoke. What must that visit have felt like for the man Leland and I called Daddy? This was his first wife, Leland and Evelyn's mother, his first true love. It had been more than 25 years since they'd come to their heartbreaking fork in the road. I can only imagine the wave of memories that must have flooded his heart that day. But our family, with more secrets than a preacher's Sunday confessional, we were experts at moments like this. In silent agreement, we held it all together. But the weight of what we didn't say was heavier than what we did. And poor Evelyn, he was the sin eater, the one carrying every burden we couldn't bear ourselves. Maybe that's why his life was so short. It was just too heavy. These secrets, though, they don't stay buried forever. The dead bodies always come floating to the surface, eventually. Years later, when those cadavers rose up from the grave, they started babbling secrets from the rooftops. The foundation of everything I thought I knew about my family cracked wide open, leaving nothing untouched. How Mama kept it all hidden and made others who knew the truth do the same is almost as big as the secrets themselves. It's all bigger than anything I ever imagined. But lies like these, they demand a reckoning. Shock that leads to redemption taught me this much. Digging through the past, facing it head on, is the only way to heal. The burden of sin only shifts when the truth comes out. And Lord knows, we've all got plenty of healing to do.